it's the one and only Paul Friends welcoming you to Starfleet Universe On Call. And tonight, well, we've got Barry, we got Gary, and we got Dave's in the chat room, and we got some. Dave's also in the other chat room, which is always good. And sorry for the delayed start for those people waiting for us in the Twitch.tv chat room because of I had to go get some water, and Gary and Barry to start talking beforehand, and it's like, okay, it's like, guys, you gotta stop because we gotta get started with the podcast because otherwise, all this stuff will never. I'm not sure what the topic is for tonight as it stands because I don't know. we'll figure it out. Hey, Barry, how you doing?
Hey, how are you doing?
Doing good.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the topic is either. We had been talking about Omega and second Gen X ships.
Yep, that is true. And talking about Omega.
That is.
Hey, Gary, how you doing?
Not too bad. So, how about that Steam Deck?
Yeah, Steam Deck actually looks quite an interesting platform. I have not looked into it that much. I've only heard about it from the tech news that I listen to. But heard about how it's Linux based. Basically, it will allow you to run any Steam game that currently runs on Linux on the device, which is, I think, is awesome. And it's a full computer. So if you want to, you can stick with Linux, or you want to, you can just install Windows over top of it. Of course, why would you? Because the idea is that you want to play games on this, from Steam. That's the whole idea of this gaming platform. And my understanding is that this is the future for Steam. They want to actually start producing devices that people, hardware that people can buy. Of course, interesting time to be introducing hardware, don't you think?
That would be bizarre. So, what hardware does this? So, Steam Deck would actually be hardware, not just software?
Steam Deck is hardware. But, it'll still run the games from the Steam platform. As long as they're available on Linux, they will be able to run it. And
so, what are the specs of that hardware? Is it high-end, low-end? Because there's a lot of people who have some pretty high-end gaming rigs.
Oh yeah, I don't think this is going to be high-end. I don't even. I need to look that up because I do not know.
If you go to steamdeck.com, that's Valve's own official site for it, and they've got sections for like hardware, software, and then one for game developers. So, but actually, it's just to kind of like reiterate the point from before the recording. I guess one of the main reasons why it was mentioned is because, on the one hand, the Steam Deck is going to have a dock, so you can use it as a desktop computer. In which case, anyone who wants to run the client, the SFU client, could run it that way. But I suppose it would also be interesting if there would be a way to use the client in handheld mode using the Deck's twin thumb pads.
It does not like me. Says, sorry, this shop is currently not available. It's like, yeah, but I don't want to go shop. I just want to look at it.
Which website are you trying to go to? Are you going to like the Steam Deck page on the Steam shop or steamdeck.com? Because I think the separate one is just for the actual hardware.
Yeah, I spelled it wrong. I spelled it streamdeck.com.
Oh, yeah, because there's some other thing that's called that, but yeah.
And it's, that's better. Cool. And the hardware. Da-da-da-da. Okay, 7-inch touchscreen, has track pads, has a gyro built in. Wow. It's like the size of a Wii U.
Is that supposed to compete with the Wii?
No, Wii U. It's a predecessor to the Nintendo Switch. It was a very poor computer, but this one I'm sure is going to be a lot better. Okay, the tech specs. Okay, AMD APU, CPU is a Zen 2, 2.4 to 3.5 gigahertz. GPU is 8 RDNA, 2 CUs, 1 to 1.6 gigahertz, and APU power is 4 to 15 watts, 16 gigabytes of RAM, 64 gigabytes of storage, and that's for and it's got. Okay, I'm not sure if this is the options or what, because they have 4 of them.
Yeah, there's 3 options because the cheapest one has 64 gigs, and then the middle price one has 256 gig solid state drive, and the most expensive one has a 512 gig solid state drive.
Yeah, high speed NVMe SSD. Yep. Cool. Of course, got the game controls, the ABXY, the D-pad, the left and right analog triggers, left and right bumpers, and 4 assignable grip buttons. Trackpad, 2 of them, which are 32.5 millimeter square trackpads, i.e. very small. They have a gyro, 6 axis.
Does it have an
What?
Does it have an Ethernet port or a Wi-Fi port?
Well, I haven't gotten to the connectivity. Displays at 1280 by 400. I mean by 800 pixels, 16 by 10 ratio. Yep. Screen size, of course, is 7 inches. So it's like, geez, it's just a little bit larger than a large phone when it comes to the screen size. Connectivity, Bluetooth and dual band Wi-Fi. ABGN and AC, so it doesn't have Wi-Fi 6, but it's 2x2 MIMO. Interesting. And audio.
The dock that they're making for it should have an Ethernet port, though.
Right.
Because basically, a lot of people have been comparing it to the new OLED version Switch, which, in terms of performance, is no better than the regular Switch, except it's got like more storage capacity, and it's got a 7-inch OLED.
Mm-hmm.
And they basically it got announced the same week as the Steam Deck, so I guess a lot of people kind of felt that if you already have one, then spending the money to get the OLED version versus investing that money towards a Steam Deck, which would be a better deal.
Oh, agreed. And of course, it's running SteamOS 3.0, which is Arch based, and the desktop is KDE Plasma. Definitely reminds me of
How much does this thing cost?
That's the one thing. It starts at $400.
So it's a little cheaper than most laptops.
Yeah.
But it's the size of a phone, you said.
Well, the screen is 7-inch screen, and then it has what? Let me see if it says how much on the sides. On the sides, looks like 2 inches, maybe. Not between 1 and 2 inches on each side for controllers. So it's pretty wide. What's really going to be interesting is, my understanding is that to get it, it's tough as nails. The people who are first in line, basically online, will get theirs this December. I know there's another person. I listened to Leo Laporte. He won't get his until December of 2022.
Oh. Okay, so this is vaporware at this point.
Right. So basically, us normal people probably won't see it until 2023. Is my guess. Might see it
Yeah,
2022.
so it's
Well, also there's like the worldwide chip shortage issue and so forth.
Yeah,
because,
that's
like
why
all sorts of devices are having problems with that.
right, which is why I brought it up. It's like not quite. I'm sorry. It kind of seems like a very inopportune time to actually announce a new gaming platform. You know, so just
yeah.
seems a little weird to me, or at least poor timing. But
So how bad is the worldwide chip shortage?
they've got thousands of Ford F-150s sitting in storage without chips to actually have the engine run. They can't run the engine because
Wow.
they don't have the chips to install them.
Oh my.
Have you actually looked at the parking lots of the dealerships, Barry?
No.
I'm not sure if you noticed or not, but most, at least around here, most of the parking lots are like a third full. That's because they can't keep the new cars and trucks in stock. You know, if you want to get a brand new one, good luck in getting it this year. You might be able to get it next year if you're lucky. You know.
Well, that explains why rental cars have been jacking through the roof on prices.
No, well, rental cars, that's a whole different story, my friend. Because of the pandemic, a lot of the rental car people, agencies, they sold off their fleets. Because there's no reason to have a fleet of cars that you're not using. And now they can't restock their fleets because they can't get them.
Yeah, I know. And I go to rent, and I have to rent cars all the time. And the prices have just been going through the roof.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Exactly. Even used cars, the prices are going through the roof. They're worth a heck of a lot more than they've ever been worth before, because you can't get new ones. So that means that the used ones are more more valuable at that point. You know.
So a Cash for Clunkers program would not do too well, would it?
A what?
Remember Cash for Clunkers?
Oh, yeah. Yes.
Yeah, I don't think that would go over too well right now.
That is true. Wow. But, this is the guy in the news that you need to keep up on, because Lord have mercy. I'm surprised it hasn't affected your industry. With installation and so forth.
It has. There's a lot of times we can't get parts.
Mm-hmm.
And it is affecting us.
Right. It's affecting everybody. And
not just chips. It's everything you can't get.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. So, yeah, a 7-inch screen, I think actually you could play SFU online on that. The difficult part, obviously, is you can play it if you put it in the dock. I think you'll be able to play it. And the reason why I say that is because of you kind of need the keyboard currently with SFU Online Client.
Mm-hmm.
For a lot, you can do a lot without it, but there's certain things you can't do without it. Like if you want to identify a drone, there's no interface for saying, get a listing. This is the action I want to take. I want to take the action for labbing, and then go, okay, select what drones or what seeking weapons or what units you want to try to identify, or if you want to do a scientific investigation, use a lab to gather some information about it. The client doesn't have that kind of stuff. That's the stuff that relies on you just entering things in as text. That's
Yeah.
also belaying the whole issue that there is no, that's the way you communicate with your opponent usually is text. If you want to, you can bring up, you can use one of the Discord channels and talk there if you want to do that, or bring up Skype or Zoom or however you want to do it. If you want to do voice, if you want to, rent a team viewer. If you have a team viewer, not team viewer, darn it, Team Speak, I think it is. Server, you can do one of those. At the moment, there's no built-in audio into the client. There's so now just to bring up the Discord server just for a moment, and that is actually we've had a new guy who just showed up on the Discord server, and he's brand new, kind of new, kind of old. My understanding is that he used to play many years ago, and now he's basically going through the cadet rules, and that's one of the reasons why I've been working on the cadet portion of the client, because there are certain things that there are bugs in the client, and I've fixed them. Things like it prompts you, you need to do your EA for scenario number 1 in the cadet training manual. In the cadet training manual, there is no energy allocation until scenario number 4. And there's also, he's seeing a bug which I need to investigate even further, which is he's seeing a bug where you're only supposed to have 8 impulses, and he showed a screenshot of impulse 2.9. It's like, no, you should not be able to do that. And I thought I caught all the places where the number of impulses is checked, but obviously I missed one. I have to check. For all I know, he might have done a next and then to turn 3 and then did a back, a previous impulse to go back, and it ended up somehow being 2.9 or something else. I have to double check.
Speaking of games with 8 impulses, how would the FC client work on the in comparison? I guess because I did see that there is a touch keyboard that you can bring up and so forth, but many of for example, there's no such thing as drone identification in FC. So
right.
There's various streamlined things. Would they be somewhat easier to handle on the Steam Deck screen? Or I guess as I say, you play the FC Online client, I guess, in desktop mode as well. But would you envision fewer obstacles to get it working on rather than the SFB client?
Yes, I would. Because other than talking, most of the stuff, there's a few things well, obviously certain of the things aren't there, which the Borders of Madness stuff is not there. The EW stuff is not there. You can do certain things, you can do the EM stuff. You can pay for cloaking and do movement and all that kind of thing. Pay for your weapons and all that kind of thing, and that will work just fine. Because there's no text entering at all for that. So as long as you can use a mouse to click, you're good. That reminds me, I got to look at an email which I just got from Sebastian tonight. I did not have a chance to look at it before I had to get things ready for tonight, for the podcast tonight. And he was asking for, I think, enhancements to the FedCom portion, because I worked on things. I got things working pretty well. Actually, I fixed a big bug, which was, I don't know how I released it the way it was, to be honest. Because it was I introduced a bug when I added support for the Andromedans. Because the issue is, of course, the Andromedans work a little differently in FedCom, in that they have these large batteries, and you have to make sure that before you actually use power, you drain the batteries first. I think that's right. Is that first or last? I think it might be last. Actually, I'm pretty sure it's last. The batteries are drained last. So that makes things a little more complicated about it. So I actually have to keep track of what is the current level in the batteries and what's the current level of energy outside of the batteries. Previously, I just lumped them all together, both battery power and like warp and all that kind of generated power. It was all considered the same. It's all power. But with the Andromedans, now it's considered separately. You have to do, you first run out your normal power, and then you start going through your batteries, which actually makes it simpler in certain aspects because that's kind of the way we already use it, though. When it comes to the batteries for, well, to a certain degree, for the reinforcement, because you have the battery power that which actually comes over from the previous turn, and well, that's the same case.
I hate to say this, but I'm starting to fall asleep here.
Okay, that's fine.
I'm gonna head out. All right. See you around.
Okay, see you, Barry.
Bye.
Good night, Barry. Oh, Paul, actually, just two things. One is you said about the Andromedans in the client, because in the FC rules, because usually most empires, they have to pay double to fly backwards because the game system wants you to fly them forwards.
Right.
But with the Andromedans, they removed that because they didn't want you flying backwards and burning off your excess energy twice as fast.
Oh.
Is that accounted for in the client as well?
No, I did not know that rule. I mean, the non-doubling for Andromedans.
Yeah, because otherwise it would have been a cheap way for them to, get rid of their excess power. And so they decided, no, that's not going to happen. So they're the only empire that pays the same amount forwards or backwards.
Okay. I will have to work on that. It is enough to do.
Speaking of it...
Yes.
I was going to say, speaking of intergalactic enemies, how well does the client handle juggernauts? Like, are there rules for shriek missiles and electrostatic armor and all that kind of crazy stuff? Or like the rotating shield as well?
Well, it doesn't have... It has support for for damaging the shield, just not indicating what direction the shield's in. Well, the electrostatic arm. Well, electrostatic armor is just regular, quote unquote armor, and except for that it is, if I recall correctly, for the Juggernauts, the armor, there's electrostatic armor is actually shield, faces different shields, right?
It's kind of like it has certain shield properties and so forth, like it blocks transporter use and so forth. But yeah, it's like you I think you assign power to it and so forth, whatever. But in FCB, at least I'm forgetting the FC rules, but there are separate FC rules for them. But also, actually, I was going to ask you, does the FC and the SFB client, do they each have their respective Juggernaut Empire rules, I should say?
Like what?
Well, there's the Shriek missiles. Are they accounted for, or?
I have to double check on that one. Probably not. I'm willing to bet that they're not because of the Juggernaut with the Shriek missiles. All that came later on in the captain's logs. And Okay, Chris is just mentioning that the Shriek missiles are in FedCom, so it's possible.
Yeah, they introduced them in there's Captain's Log 41.
Mm-hmm. It's possible I actually might have Shriek missiles in the SFU Online client, at least support from as just regular as a missile. If I recall correctly, the Shriek missiles aren't they like what kind of like is it the Scud missiles? The Quarry? But basically it's a missile. It's not like a drone rack where you have multiple you have storage. So I call it Shriek missile. You launch them and that's it.
So on regular Juggernaut Empire warships, you replace each shuttle with a Shriek missile on a one-to-one basis. There is a missile dreadnought in Captain's Log 41 that has its own Shapeways miniature, I might add, where it basically, where each of the cargo boxes is replaced with a silo for the Shriek missile. So the thing has, I think, 18 Shriek missiles, but the rules say that they can only have 3 in flight at any one time. And I guess once they're gone,
Right.
they're gone. And you cannot transfer control, which in FC wouldn't matter because there's no transfer drone control in that game either. But but each missile is like 35 points of damage and like takes a lot to try to destroy. So it's pretty dangerous.
Crap. Yeah. One thing Chris was mentioning that communique number 75 has a Juggernaut destroyer that has Shrieks.
Yeah, because it's actually funny because in the Call to Arms, actually, this was another thing that might be an interesting topic because Reinforcements 1 for Call to Arms Starfleet is available as a PDF. I'm not sure if it's gone to print just yet, but they've been I think they sent an updated PDF the other day. It actually includes a range of Juggernaut Empire ships from the frigate up to the battleship, basically to support the Shapeways miniatures if people want to use them in the Call to Arms. So it's actually kind of funny how a Call to Arms is basically leapfrog Fed Commander because one day I would very much like to see a Juggernaut Empire E-pack,
right,
or some sort of pack, which basically gives you all of the fleet for the Juggernaut ships in FedCom. But that hasn't happened just yet. But whereas a Call to Arms does let you use the fleet of Juggernauts, so there you go. And it was actually kind of funny because there is a scenario in Captain's Log 41 for SFB that I think would make a good Call to Arms scenario, where you basically they have a Soltorian fleet surrounding a hive ship called Star of Redemption, and there's a bunch of Juggernaut Empire ships of different sizes trying to destroy it. And there's even a special rule because in the fiction that goes with the story, the Soltorians realized that the shield crackers are useless against the armor, so they actually replace the scenario rules let you replace each of the shield crackers with phaser ones with the same firing arcs.
Oh,
so it's a little bit better, but basically it makes for an interesting kind of tactical setup. But the only thing is that FedCom and a Call to Arms, they have rules for the battle wagons, but they don't have rules for the standard hive ships. So I should say ship cards or entries. So
right.
I suppose they would have to create those for those game systems in order to fully play out Fire in the Deep. But I suppose what you could do is take the battle wagon and treat the side firing weapons as cargo boxes or something.
Right.
Just pretend they're not there, basically, and then use that as your quote-unquote hive ship.
Yeah, actually, that's one thing I really should do. I bought the rules for Call to Arms. I still have not read through the rules. Of course, I'm a slow reader.
But yeah, actually, the Reinforcements 1 comes with a bunch of other interesting things, too. It's got a couple of preview ships for the Wind Cluster. It's got the sample X ships. Because many of the X ships that have been added to Shapeways are now supported in this, although I guess they're kind of like provisional X ship rules because they want people to try them out and stuff. So, for example, the Federation CX and the Klingon DX both have write-ups in a Call to Arms. And there's a few other ones for I think even the conjectural Saltorian X ships are in there. So there you go. But so I guess if you want to try use them against the Juggernauts, you could. But so it's I guess the whole premise of the reinforcement pack is to kind of try and begin the process of catching up with so many Shape Raise releases that have been done over the last few years for the pre-existing Cult of Iron empires.
Yes.
So that when they do the main books can also then concentrate on adding brand new empires. So, because I think the plan was book 3, whenever that comes out, is going to introduce the Lyrans and Hydrons and LDR and Windcluster formally and stuff. So, but because the book 2 introduced the Sultorians and the Neotholians and gave you a full Orion Pirate fleet. So, with the exception of the Wind preview, it's mainly more ships for those guys, and also for the Federation Klingons and stuff.
Right. One quick question: God Arms Book 3, is that going to be an update to the rules, or is that kind of another expansion that has additional rules that can be used with Book 2.0?
Yeah. So basically, the core book now is Book 1.2 or 2.1 or something like that. See, the thing is, it's kind of tricky because they had to basically use a certain nomenclature to stop people from using the old hardcover books that Mongoose did about 10 years ago.
Those books were beautiful,
so,
but the rules sucked.
So Book 2 and Reinforcements 1, and then the eventual Book 3 are all intended to work with the new core book. So you basically would get them all and use them all together. So you'll have broad range of ships and broad range of rules and new empires and so on.
Right. So Book 3 is going to be what?
Well, I think they said it's going to be the Lyrans and Hydrons and stuff.
Yeah, but I mean, it's going to be just
for ESG.
Is it going to be like an expansion? So it just has here's additional rules versus a whole rewrite of.
Yes, it's going to be an expansion. Yeah.
Okay.
It's going to be a further expansion. So
right versus the way FedCom does it.
You'll still use it with the pre-existing moves. Yes, that's right.
Right versus FedCom where.
You
got the Romulan. I forget what it's called. Romulan Attack. Or Romulan's Attack. I think it was something like that. Where basically ADB shipped a new updated version of the rules that had plasma in it. Or, things like that.
So what happened was the original idea with FedCom was that you would have 2 separate core rule books, and you could buy either or. One of them would be Klingon border, one would be Romulan border, and then you would be able. What they did is that they did, for example, I think there's one called Romulan Space or something, which basically includes the stuff that's in Romulan border, but not the stuff that you already have from Klingon border. So it basically allows you to not have to buy both box sets if you don't want to.
Right.
And then after those 2, and then after Klingon Attack and Romulan Attack added more ships for those respective empires, then they moved on to new things like Distant Kingdoms and Tholian Attack and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
But in A Call to Arms, the contents of the first 4 FedCom boxes are pretty much in Book 1. And then the contents of things like Orion Attack and Tholian Attack are in Book 2. So in principle, the empires from Distant Kingdoms would be in Book 3, but we'll have to wait and see because, I'm not involved in that development process, and I wouldn't claim to be. So I'd leave it to the experts who are running that side of things. So.
Okay.
It's kind of like how in Star Armada they did something similar, where you had Klingon Armada included the ships from Klingon Attack and Klingon Border, and then Romulan Armada included Romulan Border, Romulan Attack, and then I forget the name of the Distant Armada, I think, that included the ships from Hydron Attack and Distant Kingdoms. And then supposedly there's going to be a new Star Armada book called Rumors of Wars, which would include the empires from War and Peace. So that would be the Andromedans.
Which is
Budar
going to be interesting. That's going to be really interesting because this is always the interesting part about Star Armada, and that is unlike FedCom or SFB, there is no energy allocation. So the whole idea of trying to simulate the way energy works in SFB is interesting. Now they do have power. They have the idea of power and actually using power, which I read through that, and actually I had a podcast about it couple months ago, I think. And because of depending upon how fast you go, you earn additional basically power points, which then you can use that for reinforcing your shields. You can use those power points, the leftover power points, or the created power points, because of the amount of power points are based on how much your engine rating is versus how much of the engine rating you use, basically, is what it is. And there's a ratio that you have to multiply that number by. Then that gives you the number of power points that you have. And well, given that, the Andromedans, their whole defense is based on energy. So, how is that going to work? Because the weapons are simple. Because, the displacement, they can do the displacement device. I don't think that's going to be a big deal. The TR beam, no big deal. We've already got basically phaser 2s. That's already implemented. Now, the whole idea of... I have to double check on Starmada whether the Starmada actually supports the idea of basically system ships. In Warp War, they were called system ships, which is system ships. Basically, the idea is that you have one ship and that holds other ships in it, and then it travels around. And that's basically what a mothership is for the Andromedans. And you have the satellite ships that basically go around inside the mothership. I'm not sure if Starmada currently supports that idea. If they have that concept. Obviously, they have that concept for like fighters and possibly gunboats. I'm not sure if they support gunboats. Or at least, the whole idea of gunboats, which is something that's relatively cheap, has weapons, but can be killed relatively easily, but still considered a ship and not considered a fighter, which is, a little, makes things a little different because you actually have shields and things like that. So, I'm not sure how they're going to convert it, because I'm assuming it's still going to use the concept of a shield. But what do you do? Do you have to require the Andromedan, the way the Andromedan actually repairs its shields? Chris, if you remember, can you actually repair shields? I think you can repair shields using PowerPoints. I think that's one thing you could do. But sounds
like you might have to invite Daniel Cast onto a future recording and grill him about it.
I saved his bacon already once. Because I saw his initial rules for the tractor beam and how the tractor beam worked. And I went, Daniel, no. In SFB, that's not the way it works. Which was basically...
Well, bear in mind that FC would be the main point of reference, because even tractors in FC aren't as flexible as in SFB. So just a word of caution there.
Right, but originally, the tractor beam just connected the two ships. So you basically would drag them along. You weren't... In SFB, you track your ship to slow it down. You try to act as an anchor so that ship can't run away. That's what a tractor beam is for. And then you can use it for defensive purposes and things like that. But that was the one thing he got completely wrong. And I told him, so he actually modified it so actually that when you have a tractor beam, it actually slows down both ships. And it's like, okay, that's good. So I saved him on that in that regard. And actually, I would love to see Andromedan. Actually, maybe I should contact Daniel because I have emailed him in the past. Because of the tractor issue, and I like to see if I can get a pre-copy of the rules. Just to review the rules and how the Andromedan ship interacts when it comes to the current rules, because to say the very least, the Stormata rules have keep on changing. And it drives me nuts. Especially since the original rules, the ones I fell in love with were the original Admiralty rules. That rule set. That's the one I originally fell in love with. And now, then they went to I forgot what the one after Admiralty was. And I'm sure Chris knows, and I'm just.
It was Admiralty and then Nova, but then they were running Nova and Admiralty simultaneously. And then they did a Unity edition to kind of like merge them together.
Right. Thank you. Yeah. And when I went to Nova, it's like, no. In the Admiralty edition, yeah, there were some things that he got completely wrong. Which was the use of drones. Because drones, when it comes to SFB, drones are basically movable terrain. All seeking weapons are like that. The idea is to modify how your opponent is moving. That's why I call it, mobile terrain, because that's what it does. Instead of coming directly at your opponent, you launch all these sequence weapons at the person. They're going to go, I'm not coming in right away. I'll run around, and you'll turn away. Well, great. That's exactly what I wanted you to do, because I'm going to chase you up right behind you. The idea is to control the other opponent. Control your opponent's movement, encouraging them through the threat of heavy damage. So, and as Chris said, Nova was super abstracted. I agree. They went a little too far off the deep end with Nova. Now they tried to correct the issue with the drones. They at least tried to do that. I like the way they did in the current edition, in the Unity edition, what they did about the plasma, which I thought was a neat solution. About it, which is basically the plasma is a flight, and you have a certain flight, which is and as each turn goes past, a turn being, I'm thinking about in relative terms, it's around a sixth of a turn, an SFB turn, because of most probably the fastest you're ever going to move is like speed 6. You're not going to go much faster than that in a Stormata turn. So versus with SFB, you're going to move 32 hexes, and as I pointed out, you basically the handle really. So you have a number of flights, and then each turn a flight is removed. You lose a flight. That's a way of, instead of saying, oh, you have to keep track of how many turns it takes for it to hit. You just say, okay, after each flight, after each turn, you take away a flight, and you slowly see physically the plasma torpedo disappear, which I thought was quite a cool way of doing it. Yeah. Chris is just mentioning how he sees Star Miles turn as a FedCom impulse, which is about right. It's a little speed wise, it's a little longer, and of course, the ranges and so forth a little different between FedCom and Starmada, because like what's considered overloaded range is out to like range 10. So, but it is. It's a cool game. I like it, and as I said, when it comes to Call to Arms, I really should. I bought the rules, and I think I bought at least one, if not both, supplements. And I need to sit down and read them, because of my understanding is that Call to Arms is the most abstracted implementation of SFB. Because it's designed for miniatures. Big surprise. So I definitely need to look. Will the client ever support Starmada Unity? Chris, I would love to do that. Actually, I did do some work on that. Actually, I did it for Admiralty and Nova Edition. I need to see what would need to be changed for Unity. And as it is, I don't know about licensing issues with that. I really need to check with Daniel, because of the original IP is owned by actually it's owned by Paramount. ADB licensed it, and then Daniel kind of licensed it from ADB. That's always a weird thing, because the reason why I say it that way is because my understanding, I talked to Steve Cole about this, and about the whole licensing issue. And basically, I am considered a contractor for ADB. ADB lets me use the IP, but they're not sub-licensing the IP to me. They are basically, everything is done under the umbrella that I'm kind of a contractor. At least that is the way it's seen. Outside of, up to the outside world, I'm a contractor. Though I'm not. I'm not. I pay my licensing fee and so forth. So I'm a separate entity. It's just that licensing wise, I'm treated as a contractor. So it works. It works. I get, I earn a little bit of an income, not much. Most of the time I've squeaked by. The only time I've actually earned a bit of income was actually this past year, because of COVID, and people just started getting quite a few subscriptions. Oh, interesting. Chris is mentioning that overload range for disruptors is 10, but 8 for photons. Did not see that. I guess I assumed that photons was also 10 when I saw disruptors, because the example I have is, big surprise, the Klingon. Actually, that reminds me, Corn. Do I have another one? Oh, it's funny. To me, it's funny. The reason why it's funny is that I realized, I'm showing on the screen now, the example that I was using when I was going through the Starmada rules a couple months ago, and that is Klingon, which has disruptor, it is overloaded, and of course the other one was a Zinti, overloaded by them. So I didn't go for Klingon versus Fed. I went for Klingon versus Zinti, and they both had disruptors. So, it did. It never occurred to me that for photons they actually had different overloaded range. But anyhow, it's it's gonna be interesting to see when book 3 comes out and the expansion, and of course Star Armada. I think, big surprise when they have the Andromedans. I'm in. But that's something I probably should do maybe this week. Is at the very least look at the core rules for Star Armada. Chris might already know this. I don't know, and that is whether it supports the idea of system ships. That's at least what Andromedans currently are using, which is motherships. The only reason I use the term system ships because that's the first time I ever heard of the concept was when I read the Warp War rules back in the 80s. That was a neat little game, Warp War. And actually, there's still a following of people who actually love playing Warp War. And let me see what they moved the group from Yahoo to, I forget, some other place. Yeah, Chris, I haven't seen the Andromeda rules yet either. That's why I'm thinking about contacting, see where Daniel is on it, because I know, Daniel is like me. Daniel has a full-time regular job, daytime job, and MJ12 Games is his side gig. Just like, to me, SFU Online and Starfleet World, that's my side gigs. I don't earn enough from those to actually pay the bills. It's mostly a hobby to a certain degree. But I do have customers, and I do my best to support those customers in the online client in any way I can help them, and so forth. So, anyhow, I think I'm gonna wrap it up with that. Gary, it's been wonderful having you around.
Thank you. Okay. Hopefully, you'll won't have too much difficulty to choose between getting in touch with Daniel and getting the client working on the Steam Deck.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I probably should do some looking at the Steam Deck and just to see what information I can find out about it, and when it comes to how easy it will be to switch to a desktop mode and a browser, and maybe even look into it again, or just see if it's possible to get the client in the Steam. I don't think so, but see what's required these days. Because last time, if I recall correctly, you had to basically, to be officially allowed into Steam, at least no, this is many years ago, you actually had to have a game review from an outside source. Someone actually already reviewed your game before you actually could be allowed into Steam, which to me these days that makes kind of no sense. It's like, well, the reason why you want to be in Steam is so you get some game reviewers can actually get it. I know they had they had an acceleration program. They started that up many years ago now. But anyway, I'll take a look see at that and definitely look at the Steam Deck, because definitely I think people will be able to play using Steam Deck, and it'd be interesting to see how that would work on a 7-inch display. Because actually, I can simulate. That's easy enough to do. I just need to get one of those USB displays and see if I can play on just use it on a regular computer just with a 7-inch display. So could be interesting. Anyhow, wrap up there. Gary, it's wonderful having you around.
Thank you, and have a good night.
Okay, you too. Okay, bye. So, things went a little different than expected, though I'm not sure if I expected the topics, because as I said, I didn't know what I was going to be having as the topics for this evening. But I'm definitely glad we talked about the Steam Deck and various topics when it comes to SFU, Starfleet University, from Starmada to Call to Arms to, hey, Juggernauts, and definitely certain things I need to work on with the FedCom portion of the client, because I think I think about that, and I think about Steam Deck, and I go, what do I have to do to make it so that you don't have to do any typing? And maybe gear the interface when it comes to FedCom to be more for that kind of interaction. Because a lot of the stuff that you can do, and Lord knows, Les doesn't know this, and that is, at least I don't see him know, is that you can use your keyboard to move your ships. You don't have to click and drag your ships. And my assumption is that you're not clicking and dragging your ships. And unfortunately, that's run into some issues because the way he does things. But anyhow, with that, I am Paul Franz, and I bid you a good night.